Testing, testing. 1 2 1 2. Good.
All right, man. Here we go. This is a third of, I guess, of a good series, man. We, like I said in the last podcast, we kind of gotten off, and we hadn't done too much during the summer. I know with school being out and stuff, so we kind of took a little break. But this is our third one. This is a surprise one, man. We got a call from the guy, and UTRGV, which is Jonah, called Ben here and said, "Hey, I have an interview for you. I have a guy I want you guys to talk to. Great story, ex-player, and all these different things." And when we started reading up on what exactly or who exactly we were talking to, we got really, really excited. And Ben and I said, "Yeah, we got to do it and figure out a way to do it." So here we are. So without further ado, and I'm not going to introduce him. I want him to kind of tell us exactly who he is. And without further ado, here we go, sir. Go ahead and introduce us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes,
really
sir.
appreciate it. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yes, sir.
So, Rolando Gonzalez, I was here 2007, 2008, a baseball player, so I was part of the baseball team. But always loved coming back to the Valley. It's been incredible what's happened over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And the future is very bright here. But, it all started. So, born and raised in Miami. And the whole reason I came over here was for baseball, right? So, growing up, so Cuban-American, right? So my father, and my grandfather were entrepreneurs, So my grandfather with the window business, my father with a print shop, and so I was in that entrepreneurial mindset about dream big, go as far as you want to go, always. And then my mom always instilled in me, the pillars of excellence, and to always do things the right way. So that carried into my academics. Growing up in Miami, I went to I would say like the varsity blues of baseball. So it's a place called Westminster Christian. A-Rod went there.
Okay.
As well as a lot of other major leaguers that came out of that program. So right out of the jump, you always had to be performing at a high level. Came out of there, signed with University of North Carolina, Greensboro, was there for 2 years. And then this was before the portal, anything was around with the portal back then, right? So it was actually the year before you could transfer and not have to sit out a year.
Oh, wow.
And so, all of the scouts, I was, back then Perfect Game was coming up, but really back then it was Baseball Factory was a big one.
Oh, right.
And so it was a Baseball Factory All-American, coming out of there.
So that's in Florida. Florida has baseball factory, and that's the biggest thing in Florida.
Yeah, it was national,
Okay.
and so that's really where like they did a lot of the rankings more before Perfect Game became what it is now.
Sure.
You know, and so so was able to have a good couple 2 years there. All the scouts knew me on the East Coast, and when I got the call to potentially go now to Texas, play a really good schedule, right? And yeah, so I took the opportunity.
Oh, cool.
Had a great.
Any big names that you played with in the high school or within your district or?
Yeah, I would say so. So we had a stacked team. We were ranked nationally, and so one of the guys I played with, our catcher was JPR and Sebia. He ended up being the catcher for the Blue Jays.
Right. Okay.
And a lot of other guys, AAA guys. We had our first baseman. He went to Louisville, played the College World Series.
Okay.
Things like that. So we had pretty.
So when you said you came out of that program, you're talking about high school, right? And then
Yeah,
the
high
first
school.
time. Now, was that the same coach that coached all these guys, or was it somebody?
So when I was there, I had two different coaches, and the last guy I had didn't last too long either. But the assistant coach I had is a guy named Emil Castellanos. He's still there, and he's like one of the longest tenured coaches now. So he's built it into powerhouse. I think they've continued the powerhouse. It's like 6 or 7 championships, state championships. And they're like winning the state championship is like good, but you want to be like nationally. Yeah. You want to win the national one.
That's awesome. And that's the thing is, like, I mean, it seems like you started kind of always at a high standard. When you're coming into a school like that, and you know what you have to kind of live up to, because of the people that came before you. And, do you feel that coming out of a school like that kind of led to your success at the college level?
100%. And I was just talking to my parents about it as we were reflecting on, coming back to campus now and all that. But when, it's a powerhouse university or high school. So as you're coming into it, you don't know if you're going to start, right? You're fighting for every spot. There's only 9 players, and you got all the, Florida's the top talent. Everybody wants to go to that school. So there's a lot of pressure. And, but it's one of those things about what I learned in that time period was you always got to be ready for your opportunity because you never know when it's going to come. Yeah. There was stacked outfield. So I was an outfielder, completely stacked. And the starting center fielder, the starting first batter, leadoff hitter, a week before the season said, you know what, I don't want to do baseball anymore. I want to go play the guitar.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And that's what he decided to do,
right.
And guess what? Now there's an open spot in the outfield. And I'm coming in my junior year. Still haven't put my name on the map, right? I have no stats to my name. I just have a lot of good skills that I'm ready to show off, right? Hopefully. And, the first game, I didn't start. The first game of the season, the guy that I was battling it out with started out there in the outfield. But he went 0 for 3. And they pinch hit me at the very end of the game. And I got my first hit right up the middle. I remember like it was yesterday. And ever since then, that was what kicked off my baseball career, right? So I had a phenomenal junior year. That was a year that a lot of scouts across the country were, recruiting me. Alex Rodriguez, funny enough, had the stolen base record at Westminster Christian while I was there. So he was kind of like a Shohei Ohtani, I guess, in high school, where he was like long and lanky, but being able to steal bases.
When he weighed about $165.
Yeah. So I was able to break his record. I would open some eyes, and then that's what got me into, the different colleges that I was able to check out. But again, that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't ready, for the opportunity and all the hard work that you got to put in and God's timing.
So from that time to when you get a call from Pan Am.
Yeah.
Take us back to that moment. You get a call from Pan Am, or how does that?
Well, before then, so I signed with. There were top 25 in the country at the time. The head coach was the head coach of USA Baseball, UNC Greensboro. They played in the Southern Conference. So some of the guys that came out during the time that I was playing there was Brett Gardner. So he went to College of Charleston.
Okay.
And so me and him were like the speed, still in base guys, always trying to ballot it out. So now we're going into this place where I'm kind of like had a great junior year, great senior year. I just signed a D1 coming in, and I'm now it was about 8 to 10 games in. I'm now leading off for Division I university as a freshman, batting over 400, right? And I'm like, man, this is kind of, this is another lesson for me was not to get, too cocky, right? And to stay humble. This was this lesson here where it's not easy. It's easy, it's easier to get there than to stay there. And for me, I got hurt that year. So what happened was 12 games in, over 400. And the coach was really big on keeping the field like pristine, even during practice. Right. So we would put on all these mats, first base mat, third base mat to protect the grass, Right. Well, we were scrimmaging. I laid down a sack bunt, and then I went my foot got caught under the mat right before I got to first base. Completely flipped and broke my wrist.
Man.
Right in the practice. But so here's the thing. I was, I didn't know that my wrist was broken. I knew that something was wrong with it. I could barely move it. Black and blue everywhere. But I didn't want to, back then in my mind, red shirting was like a sign of failure, Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Like if you red shirt, it's like, oh, this guy went there, but he red shirt.
Not anymore. It's not.
Now it's a smart thing to do.
Now it's a smart thing to do.
Now it's a smart thing to do.
Right.
Back then it wasn't, that sentiment. I didn't, it was prideful, Right. And on top of that, I was having, like freshman of the year type start.
Sure.
And so I said, I don't want to get an X-ray of this. I don't want to get an MRI because I'll have a chance of either being redshirted or. So I said, I'm going to play through it. I can do this. Didn't know it was broken, so my stats just diminished throughout the year. So that was a learning, right? That it's to stay humble and to make sure that you when you get there that you do the right things to stay there. And so my sophomore year was kind of was so. I needed a change. And so, there was a gentleman in Miami, a guy named Mike Tozar, that I would work out with and hit in the summer. And I started to look for, what are the different opportunities that are out there, what, colleges, because if I'm going to transfer, this is the year to do it. Right. I need to change the scenery. Not a ton out there because now all the schools that were recruiting me had their team set, right? You got John Jay in Miami was starting center fielder for University of Miami, so that part was taken. Then I get a call from Coach Gallick, who was the coach here at the time.
Okay. And
he said, "Look, we got an outfielder that was an All-American who just graduated. Heard great things about you. No questions asked. If you come here, you'll be the main guy, and we'll give you a full ride, just like that."
Wow.
I was like,
What'd you say? Wait, where is Edinburgh at? where, let me look it up real quick.
Yeah. I saw it. So I said, look at it. I said, wow, pretty good facilities. I said, well, okay, not in a conference, but really, really good schedule. I mean, you play Texas, Oklahoma, heavy on the road. So back then, because you're non-conference, you play a heck of a schedule, but it's like 70% away games. Right.
That's correct.
But I said, you know what? That seems like an experience, I may want to take on. And there was also not a lot of other options I had at the time. It was kind of like all roads were leading there. You know what I mean? And so I said, I'm all in. And so I signed and went to the campus for the first time. The first place we went to was a baseball stadium. Walked around with my father, and we're like, this feels like a special place,
Nice.
And that was how I got here from all the way from Miami.
What does mom and dad say when you say, I think I want to go visit a school in Texas, way down in the tip of Texas, close to Mexico? I mean, what's their reaction?
Their reaction was, look, you do what you got to do. If that's what you're being where you're being led to, knock it out of the park. Go kick butt over there. So they've always been super supportive of it. But yeah, we were kind of like having to figure out, it was kind of like, it's like, how does nobody know about this place? It was kind of like that. Like, this seems like a pretty cool place, It's like a little hidden gem type thing. So,
it's funny you say that because we talked to the coaches, and I've been told time and time again, not only from baseball coaches, basketball coaches, the football coaches, and when they're recruiting, they say, hey, come back to Edinburgh. Let us show you what Edinburgh's about. And some of these student athletes saying, first of all, what is Edinburgh? Secondly, we didn't even know there was life down there, But most of everybody and all coaches have said this. But the objective is to get them here. Once they're here,
Yep.
they want to come play here, right? The facilities are nice, weather's nice. I mean, it's just a nice place, but people don't know about it, right?
That's
So that's why I asked. I said, what does mom and dad say when you say, let's go visit some place called Edinburgh in Texas?
Yeah.
I mean, do you immediately fall in love? I mean.
Yeah, it was one of those things. You know, the main comparison I can make. So in South Florida, there's a school called Florida International University, FIU. And so when I came here and I look at FIU, you know, it's a D1 school. A lot of people know it and they go there. But I look at here, like, you know, maybe even better business program, maybe even better facilities. I was just like, this is mostly comparable to that, if not a little bit better. That's why I was surprised that not a lot of people knew about it. Right. But it's got a lot more character. You know what I mean? Like you said, close to the border. You got a lot of different things going on in the valley. You know, you got South Padre Island. You know, so it was a really cool place to kind of say, you know what. And also it was less distractions than Miami and even where I was before in North Carolina. So it allowed me to really focus on what I needed to do to be successful.
And, you know, on that note, you know, being successful, I mean, you obviously had a great career here, and it was 2 years, but you had a great career. You had a lot of accolades. You know, let's talk about a few of those things that you actually, you know, accomplished in regards to, you know, those accolades. I know, and I'll bring that one up, and that caught my attention was obviously nationally number one in stolen bases. You know, what other things did you accomplish here while you in those 2 years? Yeah,
it all started with my junior year because that was the year of like getting back to the momentum that I had before the injury. You know what I mean? The coach was great in giving me the opportunity to just kind of unlock yourself. You know, sometimes as a player, you feel like a little bit constrained, and you know, if somebody changes your batting stance, you know, and you start getting in your head, or hey, you know, why don't you try this or try that? Here it was just like play the game like you know how to play, and we got your back on it. So it just allowed me to be freer. You know, it allowed me to really maximize my potential. But in that I got better, you know, because I learned that junior year had a great year. I think I batted like 350. I had a good amount of stolen bases, probably I think it was like 30 or something like that. So it was getting my, so again, I had a great season. It was a grind though. I mean, it was a grind going to all those places on the road, you know, and all that. So, the next year I knew that there was something, like it was going to be a big year. It was like all coming down to like my senior year. Yeah. And at the beginning of the year, it was like I had a great fall. I was seeing the ball like a watermelon, right? You know, about 500 in the scrimmages. I'm just like, this is the year to just, you know, blow it out of the water. The season starts. We're 5 games in. I'm like 0 for 20. And like an ugly 0 for 20. This is my senior year. And I'm like, what the heck? What's going on? I was like, seeing it. I was like, I was just off. I was off.
You were seeing basketballs thrown at you, and all of a sudden you're seeing golf balls thrown at you.
Yeah.
At 200 miles an hour.
Yeah. It was rough. My balance was off. My timing was off. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And along the way, it's been not only a mental one, a mental journey, a physical journey, but a spiritual one too. Right. So I said, man, I gotta pray about this. Like, what's going on? There's a chapel in the middle of the university, and so went to the middle of the chapel, and said, what's going on? So I prayed that day, and he said, just go read the word. So open the Bible and about the story of Gideon, just randomly. So read the story about Gideon. Gideon was chosen. There's these people taking over all these cities and villages called the Midianites. I'm like, okay. Hundreds of thousands of them. Hundreds of thousands. An army, crazy. Said, you're going to take these guys and you're going to take out this army. Said, what are you talking about? So he's got like 10,000 guys. He said, you have too many. Tell everybody who's scared to go home. It goes down to like 5,000. Then he says, tell everybody who's thirsty to drink water. Not half the people. So now it's like 300 people, about 100,000 people. What the heck's going on? So they go to the camp, surround it, make all this noise with these vases, and it's all dark, right? So everybody's sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning. Put on the flames and start breaking these vases. All of a sudden, all these people wake up. 100,000 people don't know what's going on. They start killing each other. They win. What's the more of the story as I read? Well, the victory, right? You had too many people, so it could have said that you did it. I want everybody to know that it came from me. So I said, wow, that's interesting. So I'm 0 for 20. How am I going to do amazing things? You know, if you're going to break records, you know, when you think about breaking records, when you think about being at the top number 1 in the nation, you got to it's got to be a complete season from the start to finish. So to start 0 and 20, you know, it's really hard to do that. Man, after that, I was like 5 for 5, 4 stolen bases, 3 for 3, 2 stolen bases. It just took off. So about, I would say halfway through the season, my dad called me and he goes, hey, do you know that you're like top 5 right now in the country in stolen bases? You know, I think I had like 20 something. And I was like, really? That's interesting. You know? And then so I started tracking it, you know, so this, you know, so I got this guy here. And the coach gave me the green light, you know, so anytime I became a master of stealing bases. What do I mean by that? I never stole off the catcher ever. I didn't care what the pop time was, who was behind the plate, didn't matter. I knew I was able to get it to a T from the pitcher, the time that he lifts his leg to the time the ball hits the mitt. That's the key. And to be able to know if it's a curveball, if you know you're going to be able to have a tenth of a second faster, that you know it's going to be slower to get to the plate if it's a curveball or a changeup than it is a fastball. So you know what counts to steal off of, everything. So it was always off of the pitcher that I would steal off of.
And that's big time. That's big league stuff there. You know, when you know that they're up in the count, the pitcher's up in the count, and he's probably gonna throw a curveball. He's probably gonna throw a slider or a changeup because he's up in the count, and the batter behind you or the batter at the plate has been swinging the ball well and is cranking that inside pitch. So they got to go outside. So little things like that. I mean, you put into your head. I mean, not everybody does that. You know? So I mean, kudos to you, and good for the coach to giving you that green light too.
That's right.
So
that's right. Kudos to him because it's a risk, right? I mean, you're still So for me, there was, like you said, for you to do something in that manner, whether it's swimming, bowling, whatever, you have to. It's a craft, right, from the beginning to the end. So it started with the lead. I would practice from the fingertips, from the dive, the step and a dive back to the bag, that it was the maximum amount of lead that I could possibly take without getting thrown out. So, I mean, it was just like, so that's step 1, right? Step 2 is getting the timing of the pitcher while people are trying to look at like, you know, okay, I'm going to time his fastball and all that, I'm looking at the bullpen. So being in the outfield, they would, before the game, they're warming up in the bullpen. And so they're doing stuff out of the stretch and all that stuff. That's where I'm timing the guy. So I'm pretending I'm there shagging balls on the outfield, and I'm there timing the guy. You know, where it became tricky was, okay, off of right-handers, it's a little bit easier to steal second base because it's, you know, you're going off first move. But what if somebody is really quick to the plate? What if you time them? And that was the ones that I hated, was the side steps. You know, and some people they mix it up in their game, but some of them just always sidestep. Yeah. So and those were the hard ones. So what I did there was I would delay steal. So you shuffle off. The catcher's like, oh, okay, he's not gonna steal, and by the time he figures out that I'm gone,
then you stole on the catcher at that.
At that point you steal on the catcher, and also not only the catcher but the shortstop and the second baseman.
Right, not paying attention, probably turning around, getting ready or kicking the dirt around, and
right, or too far from the bag.
Right.
So by the time even if they are paying attention, they won't be able to beat me to the bag. Right.
Right.
So that's another 4, 5, 6 stolen bases you get from there. You know, and then off a lefty, you're just going. And
so you heard it here first, kids. You gotta pay attention. I tell these kids all the time, you're in the dugout, pay attention. Watch the pitcher. Don't be, jacking around, playing with your friends or your phone, or watch the pitcher. You watch the pitcher even when you're in the dugout, not only on base. I mean, you've got that edge, And again, I'm glad you said it. I mean, you're the master at this. So little things like that give you the edge. It's not cheating. It's just being smarter than the next guy.
Yeah.
So obviously you have this. It seems like you've had this from a very young age where you kind of master things. There's a way to do things, and obviously you become a student of the game, whatever game that is. Now, with what you were saying and everything you were saying, and I think Ben said it best as well. It's like those are big league things. It was going pro a thought in your mind, or did you always think that, I'm going to go into the business route? I know you mentioned business school as well. Were either one of those an option, or were you always focused on that one?
It's a great question. So after that year, one of the things that I was looking forward to was getting drafted, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I think part of that was the university was not in the position as it is now to have the exposure that it has. And even though a lot of, it was just one of those things where it just didn't happen. However, the conversations continued after the draft, as a lot of other folks, would sign these kind of free agent contracts and all that kind of stuff. So I did play in Clearwater, Florida for a little while with the Phillies.
Okay.
It was right after they won the World Series and extended spring training. So it was kind of like on the short-term contract situation down there. But after being there for even just a few days, I kind of was like, okay, this is kind of like a crossroads situation where do I want to spend, the next 5-7 years going all in, continuing down this baseball route. Thankfully, I've been blessed with the opportunity to take on other ventures and other challenges and be able to do that. And so I studied international business, and at the same time, there was a new coach that came into the university, Coach Mantrana, that came from Miami. And so he's like, hey, if you want to come back, get your MBA, you can help out with the baseball team, kind of like as a graduate assistant, and you get a free MBA. And, that's something that could be on the table too. So I was kind of at that crossroad, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and try to dominate the business world now. Yeah. One of the reasons for that was when you get to that level, right, it's not a meritocracy anymore. It's not about it's a lot of it is still where if you perform, you're gonna get it promoted to AA, AAA, and all that. Yeah. But it's a little bit different, because if you come out and someone invests a couple $1 million as a signing bonus to somebody, they're gonna invest a lot more time into that person to make them successful, regardless of how you perform, right? And that makes sense. It's an investment. So that's where I kind of was. You know what? I think it's time to move on to something else.
Hang the cleats up.
That's right.
Can you steal a base today?
I could probably steal one,
okay,
but then don't ask me to steal another one.
That works. We need one at a time. So, Coach Matlock, if you're watching, Rolly here can steal a base.
So with that said, I mean, did you know what you wanted to go into? So you're going the business route. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with it, or was it just like, okay, what? Or in other words, were you chasing something that from the get-go, or was it waiting for that opportunity?
Yeah. Well, at that time, the economy wasn't the best. It was around that 2008, 2009 time, so it wasn't the best. So I knew that the next step was to continue in getting an MBA. I knew that much. I didn't know much after that, but I knew that that was the right step. When I came back, I did help with the baseball team, but I also got my first real job, really, which was with the university in the Rural Economic Development Center. And it was a grant that was a partnership between the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, and the university. And what we would do is we would go help these farmers and ranchers in the area who would grow these crops and do all these great things, but turn it into a business. Oh, wow. And so that was a really, really cool way where I was, and also that qualified me for in-state tuition. As well, which was a big determining factor of me coming back to the Valley. So that was really cool, and my first step into food, really, and being able to turn something into a business and be able to help the folks in the Valley. So as I learned more, got my MBA, and I was graduating, there was a company called 3G Capital that purchased Burger King that is headquartered in Miami, okay? And these guys are a private equity. They're one of the largest, and they're Brazilian-based. And they're known for what they do is they take over companies that they believe are very large, iconic brands that people know. Like, think about Burger King, right? But that maybe are a little bit old and tired and like need a refresh, but also that there's a lot of fat in the business that could be cut and optimize cost and efficiency. So when they take over companies, they usually take, people is a big part of what they cut.
Yeah.
So they go in and they let go of a lot of vice presidents and senior vice presidents, and then they fill them with new, fresh MBAs that you can pay a fraction of the cost that they had and see who can sink or swim. Okay. So when I graduated from my MBA, that's what happened. They were bringing in the first class of MBAs to come in to Miami and take over all of these positions that they just cut and see who could survive this in a very, very kind of apprentice type environment. So for me, that was the best transition from athletics and being at that high level of competitiveness to now business in that same kind of environment. So there could be no better transition that I had than that. And that was an amazing ride.
And did you know that was what they were doing, or did you find this out later?
They were very clear with what was happening. They're like, we're bringing in 50 people, we'll be lucky if 20 of you guys survive. So what you did is it was a 6-month program first. So they put you three months into a Burger King. So the first 2 months, you're kind of learning everything and all that. The last month, you're running the business. And, a lot of people don't know, but, like Church's Chicken, Burger King's, I mean, these are $1 million businesses from a sales perspective. And so to be a manager of that, I mean, you're dealing with people hiring, training, the whole thing, inventory, supply chain. So got to learn all that firsthand during that. It was like a crash course in that. And then you do a month and a half rotations in different parts of the company where they think that you might be a good fit. So after those 6 months, you kind of are, so everybody's kind of at their desks, right? And you're by a phone, and they say when the phone rings, you pick it up, and then you go to the boardroom. And then after that, they tell you if you survived or not, and what your job's going to be in the company. Okay, but you go through it because these are, I mean, there's no, it's intense, but there's no company out there that was offering you the opportunity, the scope of responsibility, and the money, right? So it's that kind of environment. So get the call, go to the boardroom. And they said, look, congratulations, you've been one of the best here. You're at the top of the class. We want to give you a $350 million business P&L to manage. You're going to be in charge of more than 350 restaurants in like 8 or 9 different countries. And if you're successful there, we'll make you the chief operating officer of all of Latin America and the Caribbean. And I said, okay, cool. They said, but if you want this position, you got to move to Puerto Rico next week. And so here I am, right? I'm like, hey, I just came back to Miami, right? The whole point of me coming back here was to be back home in Miami and, be with this company. But I said, and this is, I can't.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a once in a lifetime situation. Let me knock this out. Meanwhile, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was waiting for me to come back to Miami too, right? Because she was getting her MBA and then we were finally going to be together. I said, give me one more year. Give me one more year. Let me do this. And so, credit to her. She was all in with me and she stayed studying, she was in Miami and then I was in Puerto Rico. We had a long distance and a year and 3 months later, I delivered and learned a ton and they stayed true to their word. And I became the head of Latin America and the Caribbean for Burger King, 1,700 restaurants in 30 countries.
Wow, good for you.
And
awesome.
It's crazy. I mean, 'cause it all ties in, and even just listening to it now firsthand, and reading about it are two different things. But, when I hear about what you do, you're obviously making these decisions to make these companies better. All those decisions are risks. All those decisions are either going to work or they're not going to work. And it just ties directly back, in my opinion, to stealing the base. It's a risk. Yeah. If you're going to steal a base, you're risking that you're going to be, obviously out. And you learn how to perfect that risk in stealing the base. And it just seems like it completely transferred over to what you're doing now.
100%.
And obviously that year and 3 months, man, made a world of difference in using that risk.
And let me tell you something too. Like, I think, so it's important to note that I was, I think, one of 4 or 5 out of the 50 that were not from an Ivy League school. So all the people that I was battling with was Harvard, Princeton, Yale, the whole shebang. right? The best of the best. The reason I was able to even get in the door, didn't know anybody there, was because of number one, the athletic part of it, where part of to get the job, they put you in the boardroom and they say you have 30 seconds to say why you deserve this job before the person next to you. That was part of the interview process. And I said, well, nobody in this room can hit a 95-mile-per-hour baseball in front of thousands of people. So, and I've done that before. So, that was one of the things that differentiated me. But I say that, why? Because there's no reason why UTRGV can't provide you the opportunities as far as you want to go. You can compete with anybody as long as you apply yourself in that, right? So that's what I tell the student athletes, and anybody that's any student as well.
That's awesome. And I think one of the biggest, that exactly. I mean, obviously growing up here and being born and raised and still here, you do get that. It's like a diluted university. I mean, you kind of feel that way here. And a lot of people think like, oh, if you don't go, to A&M, you don't go to UT, you don't go to Texas Tech, you're not going to a big college. You're not going, but I'm very, very happy having kids of my own. One's a sophomore about to go into college in the next few years. She's already seen like UTRGV is just like any other. So the university is doing their part to kind of let people know the same message you just said right now, is that just because you're here and you're not leaving the Valley, it doesn't make this university anything less. And it's awesome to hear it from you, and obviously with your accolades.
And that's a good story and a good point, Fabian, because a lot of these athletes that leave town, they come back home and say, well, I missed home, or I didn't do too well at Houston or A&M or whatever. And they come back home and say, well, I'm gonna have to settle for UTRGV. It's not settling anymore. I mean, It hasn't been for a long time. I mean, and even more so now. I mean, the university is just a top notch. I mean, you go onto a U.S. Weekly, you go to a lot of we're nationally ranked.
Right.
Academically, and now here we go
school.
with football and the medical school. The business program is just outstanding as well. So I mean, again, for those folks that are watching, especially the kids, hey, you want to stay home, stay closer to home, or if you're not from around here, and you want to come down and visit deep subtropical South Texas. I mean, this is a great story. I mean, and thank you, Rolly, because now we can press it against something or somebody's actual story. So thank you again. But most definitely the fantastic story. We're so happy to have you here, and I know Fabian had some of
and with Church's Chicken, man, and again, I kind of now get into what you're doing now and exactly, but before we move on to Church's Chicken, I have, because you said a lot of times people leave, and I left for a year. I went to A&M Corpus, and I had the idea I was going to become a vet, and I wanted to go there first before I went off to A&M and so forth. And honestly, I mean, money held me back. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford, staying there. Very, very prideful in the sense of, my parents would call like, hey, everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. And I would tell everyone, it's a bad experience, but it's a great experience to me, is the longest I went was 3 days without eating, because I didn't have it. And I'm saying that because Church's Chicken had a $1.99 chicken fried steak biscuit and what was it, mashed potato meal for $1.99. And I found out real quick that the couches in front of classrooms had a lot of change, and those were the meals. And then I told my wife that Church's Chicken saved my life for a little while. So it's one of those things where you kind of go back and you see it, and right now you go and you buy this chicken and it's like not a big deal, but back then it was a big deal for me. But to go back to the question is, right now, I know you said what your role was back then. Is it the same role you have now, so many years later?
So it's a little different. After I was 10 years with Burger King, we ended up creating a parent company and acquiring other brands. So we acquired Popeyes. We acquired another brand called Tim Hortons. Okay. And then I ended up moving not only from Latin America, but I had a global scope. So I was in charge of, now 20,000 restaurants across 3 brands in 100 countries. And doing all the standards for that. So that was my last position when I was with RBI. Similar to that crossroad in baseball, it was time for a refresh. It was time to do something else. And I wanted to always get startup experience. Like what's that, it was at the time when the SPACs were like a really hot thing where you can kind of grow a company, a tech company, and make it go public really quick and all that kind of stuff. And so I did that for a little bit with virtual brands, where, working with celebrities, creating food brands on apps where you can order on DoorDash and Uber Eats. That's a whole nother story. And then I got the call for Church's Chicken from an executive headhunter, and they said, "Look, we think you're perfect for this role." And I said, "Tell me more about this. Let me see what's going on." They said, "No, we're building this all-star team of executives to turn this iconic brand around, you know?" And the more that I learned about Church's Chicken, the more that I was like in love with the brand. Because think about it, Church's Chicken is a 72-year-old brand, and you think about how many, brands that were once American icons are no longer here. You look at like a lot of retail brands like Sears, Radio Shack, all these type of places were always around and now they're not. And so you start going through the list, man. This brand is 72 years old. What makes it so special for it to have lasted this long? And the bottom line is it's the food. The food is unbelievable, and it's the best. I really believe it's the best chicken. Certainly at the best value, like you said. You cannot, literally fill your stomach at that type of quality for any cheaper price, no matter what. So, but even with that, the brand was still around at the detriment of a lot of broken systems that needed to be fixed. That I knew the playbook of because I just did it for 10 years and grew this other company. So, I jumped in all in, and we are on an absolute train right now. The food and beverage industry is about flat, and we're double-digit positive in a lot of different categories.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of that is bringing back the value to the consumer. We're not a premium brand; we're a brand for everyone, and we're in a lot of communities. We're part of the community, And just like everything comes around in a circle, we have 800 restaurants in the U.S. And one of our biggest markets that we own corporately, 150 owned corporate restaurants, is in the Valley. We have 40 restaurants in the Valley. So now I take this role, and I go, okay, where are our company restaurants? Well, our biggest market is an RGV. Well, you get out of here,
That's
and
awesome.
so now I'm back in the Valley, not only for visiting the great university, but also the business part of things and the churches. So,
So do you regularly visit the Valley?
Yeah,
Good.
I do. I regularly visit that. So I also was able to. I got a call about 8 years ago to be on the board of the University of Texas Foundation. So I sit on the board. So I've been very involved with the university, supporting the students. And then so I come back for board meetings. And then now, I double it and be able to visit the restaurants.
That's awesome. And it's I'm going to go back to something you mentioned earlier. And I think you said you came back for it. And that was one of your first jobs was, kind of getting, farmers set up with like a small. So I just recently heard that, I would say about 6 months ago, maybe less, where there's a couple who was kind of doing something like that, where they were getting, people a plot of an acre or two. They were growing their own stuff. They were selling it, making a business of it. Is that something you guys started back then, or was that something new, or was it?
There was a couple of things that we did. One was provide like outlets for micro loans to get things started. So that was one avenue that we would do. Education on how to like all that stuff works. A lot of just educating. This is how business works. This is how you run your books.
Okay.
This is all that kind of stuff. Creating farmer market events so that they can actually turn their monetize their products, and then establishing cooperatives where you have a bunch of farmers that now collectively come together and are able to leverage the power as a whole.
Nice.
So those were really the main things that we did.
It's just really cool, 'cause it seems like you kind of started, from the bottom in a sense, where you kind of started that whole literally growing the food and kind of getting to where you are now. And it seems like a lot of that stuff may have helped you, kind of understand the food business now. And with that question, and I know it seems like you've been part of the food industry, since the get-go. I'm sure you kind of know this, but when a business is failing, whether it's food or not, do you feel there's a common reason of failure, whether it's in the retail business of clothing, whether it's in the retail business of whatever? Do you think, with your experience of the food, do you think those are the same kind of common reasons that the business fails?
I think the elements are that make a business fail or succeed are go hand in hand, and it's whenever you lose focus of who you are and where your core is. Okay. So a lot of these companies, and you're seeing a lot of them go bankrupt right now. And even in the food and beverage industry, if you look, they've gotten far from who they are, who their core is, in what they provide. This, you know, whether it's a product or a service, or what the guest expects, or your customer expects. So sometimes you try to grow too much, and in that growth, it's good to grow as long as you stay true to your core. But the more that you kind of go outside of that too much, and your growth start to get away from who you are, that's where things start unraveling a little bit. And also in doing that, people get a lot of infatuated with growth and only thinking about the positives, but you always got to prepare for what happens on a downturn, you know, and that, so you always got to have profitability in mind and your margins and all that. So that's one of the things that, you know, in my current role is franchise profitability. You know, one of the reasons we've been so successful is because we've been able to cut costs for franchisee, you know, whether it's food cost, labor, how to make things more efficient in the kitchen. Because when they're profitable, they're going to want to grow more restaurants. Right. You know, they're going to want to be able to deliver better service. They're going to want to be able to pay their people better. So really, you know, knowing how to run a P&L and being very focused on profitability.
Nice. And is that something that you? I mean, that's interesting to me because I see all of a sudden, I mean, years back, the signage kind of changes. Okay, that's cool. It's kind of hip and, you know, new. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, and not to say that when these other signs change, other companies, it's not. And it's always nice to see something new. Then all of a sudden you see the menu changes a little bit. You know, it's like, okay, you know, so that's something that strategically happens at a certain time, or you guys decide, hey, you know what, it's time for this to change, or I mean,
it's a good question. So Church's Chicken is interesting. Specifically talking about Church's Chicken because we are also international. So we have 1,600 restaurants. Half of them are in the U.S. The other half is international in 24 other countries. And Church's is not necessarily, especially a lot of our Middle East countries, like church is not the type of thing you want to lead with internationally. Right. So internationally, we're Texas Chicken. So we kind of rebranded to Church's Texas Chicken across the board. And then we're Texas Chicken internationally, Church's Texas Chicken in the U.S. But as far as image and logos and all that kind of stuff, what happens is usually there's like a 5 or 7 year, marketing. There's like marketing studies that say usually that's about the time where things start getting tired, right, both in your image of your building and also your logo. So, you know, you kind of need to refresh it a little bit. So that's usually what most companies do. However, there's some iconic, you know, companies like a Coca-Cola or something like that where you kind of just stay true.
They cannot change.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as like the menu items, so I see that. I mean, for the most part, last time I went to Church's was last month. Popper's still there, the chicken, I mean, chicken strips. I mean, there's nothing new. There's nothing crazy that you guys do. I mean, it's simple, does it, huh?
Well, part of our success right now has been focusing on that core, but we are throwing in some new things. So number one, our main thing was how do we get our great food? We don't need to innovate too much because, like you said, our food is really good, but it's how do we get it in the hands of more people in the way they want to get it? So we needed to revamp our app. You know, we had a low percentage of our sales that were through digital, and that was because we didn't have an app that really worked very well that people knew about. So that was like invest in technology. Let's get people to do that. And our growth has been very big in the digital side of things, much more convenient, hot, fresh chicken when you can order, pick it up, take it out, awesome, whatever you want. So that was a big investment. We went back to our original seasoning of a marination of our chicken. It was always great, but there was, you know, some things along the way that for cost cutting, you know, try to get out, and we were actually able to save costs, get even better marinated chicken, you know, always fresh, marinated and battered in the restaurant. So that stays the same. There's nuggets that were in the Valley. So that's a new thing. If you go to the restaurant, you can get some good nuggets. And then we have some exciting new things like wraps, sauces. There's some really cool sauces we're throwing out. So we did a Hulu special for a show called, basically it's you take all of these farmers that they are able to make peppers. They grow peppers, hot pepper growers, and they mix them with sauce makers. And so we made a hot sauce. just for churches
That's
on
awesome.
a Hulu special. So those are the type of things that we're rolling out.
Staying innovative, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because either you're in or you're out, right? Or,
Right.
I mean, I remember my childhood. We would eat Church's chicken here on the university. My granddad would send for a big old 16-piece box. I think it was 16 or 15-piece. And when there was guest over, it was 2 15 pieces or whatever it was. First thing people would dig into was, where's the biscuits?
Yep.
Where are the biscuits?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that has to absolutely be the number one thing, huh?
That's right. If there's one thing that I can't have just one of, is the biscuit.
Right.
And so if you ask me the question probably in another couple years, if I can steal the base, I don't know if I can answer yes to that anymore.
Would you consider that your favorite menu item at churches?
That is definitely my favorite menu item is the biscuit. And then if not, I'm having a 2-piece breast and a wing with the jalapeno poppers.
There it is.
You go. And it's funny because you mentioned that and it's a running joke in my family because we've gone to several reunions or just parties and everybody takes, it's a potluck and everybody takes, their homemade stuff. My uncle, it doesn't fail, box of chicken. And it's a box of Church's chicken. It's like, and we're waiting for my uncle. It's like, well, where's he at? Because I don't want to taste Aunt over here is whatever she made. I want to wait for that chicken.
Yeah.
But it's cool, man. It's become, I think obviously cultural, but it goes back to the affordability of it, but it's also great food, and the affordability of it kind of allows us to kind of indulge and say, hey, I'll take 2 boxes, and you're going to take plenty of food for a lot of people.
Yeah. And what's really cool is, being able to now connect Church's Chicken with the university, right? So we just one of the biggest sponsors now of athletics.
Nice.
So you're going to see we were just in March Madness having a bunch of activations. You're going to see half-court shots where free chicken for a year. You're going to see, in the baseball field, the foul poles with Church's Chicken. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And, I think that's a super idea, first of all, because you talk to any of the younger kids and what kind of food do they like is free food or food they can get at a arena or I want a box of chicken or I want this right. So their favorite food is free food. So once they get to taste that and those biscuits, they're hooked. I mean, immediately. So good for you guys. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And again, Ron, thank you so much for just taking that small part of your time. I know you're busy, and obviously, I mean, again, very, very, humbled, to have somebody like you come in just because of what you've accomplished, what you've done, where you've traveled, and all these different things. I mean, to get the perspective of someone like you, and again, I'm really, really happy that you mentioned your academic, success here and now just your success now in life. It's awesome for me, I think Ben as well, to have kids that are getting into that realm and know like, hey, you can leave. I tell my daughter all the time, you can go anywhere you want, but just don't dismiss, where we're at, and it's a great school. And thank you so much again, for just, allowing us to ask you a few questions and then kind of picking your brain a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And thanks for all the things you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, just like, we always say, guys, and I think Rolando's here, the perfect example of it is sometimes you just gotta, get those boots on and just gotta cowboy up. So that's why we call this show Vaquero Up, guys. And with him being involved with UTRGV, we'll go ahead and end it with the V's Up here. Guys, thank you all for tuning in, and here you go, V's Up.